So, in an effort to go beyond the details, what I typically do when I detail a car is prepare it for a concours event. While doing that, what I like to do is to cheat and get the scoring sheets. This is an interesting story. This is a 365 Berlinetta boxer that we did about a year and a half ago, and we prepped it for a couple of different shows, and it's gone through the show circuit at Cavallino and the Ferrari Nationals. And we have the scoring sheets that were done at that time. The object is to get the scoring sheets and then make any corrections that were necessary as we went along. So now that we've had this, it's already been to a shop. We've done a little bit of body work that needed to be done, I'll explain in a minute, and some other odds and ends. But for the most part, we've now fixed everything that was listed on the scoring sheet here. So at that time, it scored a 96.5, which would put it right out of Platino, Platino being 97 points, which would be first place technically. So with that, I'm going to open up the car and we'll take a walk through it, and I'll show you all the changes and corrections that we made. Here we go. The thing about Ferrari judging is that the car should be driven. So everything should work normally, and their cars are driven onto the show field and sometimes on a tour before the event, or even a track day before the event. You know, we don't really look at things like the little dust in the corners and things like that. And I know that there are other concours events, even marque-specific, that go in with white gloves and stuff. Well, it doesn't make any sense to me, but we'll leave that to the Porsche guys. So the big thing is you're able to get the scoring sheet after the car is being judged. So this scoring sheet came from Cavallino last year in West Palm Beach in January, and it was judged a 3-judge team. And the chief class judge is responsible to fill out this information based on what was gleaned from the car at the time, and then put it on this summary sheet, and this is what we get. With that in mind, the things that need to be corrected at the time, and it required a little bit of body work. Right here behind the license plate. So just a little background, this year car and this type of car, 365 BB, was never really imported as an American car. So they were always gray market. So it had this hokey license plate bracket on the back. So they made a new license plate bracket, which was one of the things they gigged them half a point for, as well as it had some holes where people had drilled for license plates. So those were all filled in, repainted, and you can't even tell where it's been repaired. So that's taken care of. I should also note that most of this car is in original paint. So with that in mind, we didn't want to be too invasive. We don't want to go in there and start blending big panels. This is just the strip under the license plate, and it's only about 1 inch high. So they were able to go in and blend that and kind of match the orange peel that was already on the car. Really nice job, by the way, by the body shop. These struts were mounted upside down. So we flipped them back over, put them where they're supposed to be. Right here on these heat shields. Typical of a boxer, these heat shields, but on the early car like this, we had, originally they had Phillips head screws, which would have been incorrect. They're supposed to have yellow CAD screws or hex nuts, as you can see here. So all that hardware has been replaced with the proper yellow CAD hex nut here and here. One of these air intakes, they come right into the air intake here for the carburetors, but one of these air intakes was actually broken and cracked, so that needed to be repaired. The only other thing in the engine compartment that was a major problem were the fuel lines. Now, because of the age of the car, and this is a relatively new car to the owner, it went in for a major service. And when it went in for service, one of the things that they did at that time, which was after Cavallino, was to replace all the fuel lines. So with that, they also put the proper Norma clamps. You can see them here, and hopefully you can see this. So right here, you've got your carburetor. So they run all the way up this way, and then the return line goes back to the tank. This one comes this way from the fuel pump. So all those clamps that you see here, the black lines with the silver clamps, these are brand new and of the proper style. Oh, the only other thing back here was the exhaust system. The exhaust system for this car is made of unobtainium. You just can't get these anymore. This is actually one that was a reproduction of the original factory one. It's not a reproduction of the ANSA exhaust. This is exactly the way the factory stock exhaust would have been for the European car. If you notice, it has 6 tips on the back. That's common to the 365 BB. It was changed later for the 512 BB to 4 tips. So these are exclusive to this car. So it was a very expensive proposition to get pipes made for it. Originally, and this is an interesting thing, this judge, or chief judge, called out that the exhaust system should have been a natural color or a silver painted color, when in reality they came from the factory in black. So he actually called the owner of this car and told him that, hey, I found out later that it should be black. Well, the damage was done, we already got our awards and all that stuff, and we moved on. But that being noted, what we did back here for the exhaust system is completely correct, and we're not changing that anymore. So here we are. This is our Boxer. We're ready to go back to the competition and see what we can get. There are only other couple little notes. There was a passenger seat reclining cover that was broken. We fixed that. And that's really about it. Most of it was here in the engine compartment. So with that in mind, we're going to go back into competition. Hopefully we'll take this to Mount Tremblant this year, or one of the other nationals, or maybe to Cavallino next year, and see if we can get our Platino. Anyway, this is my world. This is it. Fixing, doing stupid little minutia to make these cars win a $3 ribbon at a concours event. So as ridiculous as it sounds, it also preserves the mark, and that's the whole idea. This car is going to be exactly as it was designed and delivered in 1974, and that's what we want. We want the cars to be in this original style condition and to perform and act like they were back then. Okay, so we kind of went through the entire engine compartment and all the deductions they had taken through there. Let me walk you into the interior and show you a little bit about this car, because these are pretty unique. You don't see them very often. So let's move down into the interior. Okay, so one of the things that they picked up on was there's at the end of this seat, there's a plastic piece. We've got one on order, and if we can't get that, we'll probably have one 3D printed so that it looks appropriate. But parts for this type of car are getting pretty scarce. It's not like we're going to go to Napa and find them. So we probably have to wait a little while before we can get that resolved. Anyway, one of the earliest mid-engine cars from Ferrari. I mean, we had the Dino before this, but nothing with this kind of horsepower. So it's just around 300 horsepower, flat 12, with the engine right behind your head, very much like a Miura. These things are just brutal to drive. They're a lot of fun. They sound incredible. They sound like a Formula One car at speed. But this interior was pretty state-of-the-art. So imagine that this car later became the Testarossa, later became the F12, et cetera, et cetera. This was their top-of-the-line car. So as we move in here, you can see some of the toggle switches. I mean, this is very 70s. We've even got an original Blaupunkt radio with a cassette in it from the period. But what was kind of cool about this car were the gauges. So hopefully we'll get a good shot at those, because they're orange on black. And they're just, at the time, these were just as cool as you could get. Typical Ferrari, small diameter Momo steering wheel, all leather dash, beautiful leather seats, all hand stitched. I mean, this was it was an expensive car and a very fast car for its time. So moving on, we're going to go into the front trunk area. And no, it's not a frunk, sorry. So of course, being a 70s car, pop-up headlights, where that leather strap is, it's not there right now, but that would hold a factory toolkit, which came in a little leather box, and you open it up and it had wrenches, had bulbs, fuses, anything you would need if you took a long road trip, and just in case something happened, you were able to get back. Down here is your jack bag. That's what the black bag is down here. This is usually covered by the spare tire cover and then the spare tire on top. In this case, what's interesting, we'll take a look at the spare, because it's very unusual. It ran these really funky, like 115 or 125 Michelins on an alloy wheel, and they're really weird looking, but the F1 team would use them to move the cars around the pits, and they had the same style big wheel on them to move the cars without running race slicks on it to get on and off trailers and stuff. But wait till you see the spare, it's funky. Anyway, dual fans up front, as I said, pop-up headlights. But one of the things that makes a Boxer unique is this. One, this massive windshield, an over-engineered double parallel wiper system like no other car ever had until now. It looks like something off of an aircraft at some point. There's a little blade, a big blade, but the whole system is just this monstrous thing. It's always been cool. But moving up front here, really the thing that made a Boxer, whether it was a 512BB or 365 like this, was this. That center grille, and the two big marker lights. So in the early cars, they were clear. Also, Italian cars were clear because of regulations. But when the 512 came over here, they were amber. So it looks especially good on a black Boxer when you can see just the grille and just those lights. They're really cool. Okay, look, I told you I'd find it. This is the spare. So, center lock, magnesium wheel, tire designed just for this wheel. It's a 105/19 radial. Has an asymmetrical tread, so it can only be mounted in that direction. I mean, this thing is just insane. All the engineering that went into a spare. But the spare was meant to be driven at high speed, so imagine you couldn't put just a simple space saver in there. Anyway, I had to show it to you. I thought it was awesome.